Lakeside. I am Noah Wright. I'm one of the pastors at Lakeside. I can't tell if this is starting or not. I don't think it is. Has this started? Yeah, actually, I think it has. Okay, well, good afternoon. My name is Noah Wright. I'm one of the pastors at Lakeside, and this is our latest live stream in the desert, in dry places. And so for today, I wanted to share a tiny little psalm that's been a great comfort to me in this season since I first read it. It's Psalm 131. The author David writes in the middle of complete chaos. His own family had turned against him. His kingdom is at war. He's lost a son, and he's been confronted by his own inner darkness and turmoil of his own heart. But in the middle of all of this chaos, he writes this little poem, Psalm 131, where he says, "O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. But I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with its mother, like a breastfed child is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore." And so in this psalm, we see that in crisis, David learned that it's better to receive God's presence than to receive answers from him. It's better to receive God's presence than answers. At times, we all wonder, why are you letting this happen, God? Where are you? What are you thinking? Why would you let this happen to me? And it's more than okay to cry out to God with our questions and confusions. In fact, another Psalm of David, Psalm 13. Let me find it here. In Psalm 13, David has the same kind of cries to the Lord. He says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me?" And so in the Psalms, there's this permission to ask really hard questions, to not pretend that we're not experiencing bad emotions, to not experience, that we're not experiencing deep sorrow and anguish and confusion when we come before God. Like, we're invited to do that. But what we see in the Psalms as well, and especially in Psalm 131, is that David knew, just like all of us know who have experienced real suffering, that most of the time we don't get the answers we're looking for. We just don't. Most of the time, God does not choose to answer some of those questions, and we're left with question marks over our lives and the way that we're suffering. Why is God choosing to allow COVID-19 to be such a pandemic, right? Like, we don't know. God, we just don't know. And so, we can either allow that to create deep turmoil in us, or we can, like David, move into this new posture of the heart. David says in Psalm 131, let me go back to it. He says, My eyes are not raised too high. I don't occupy myself with things that are too great and too marvelous for me. Like, I can't understand this, and so I'm not even gonna, right? Like that's not where I'm gonna focus my attention on all these unanswered questions. Instead, I'm going to lean into God's presence in the middle of my suffering and questions. So I'm not going to run away from my questions. I'm not going to run away from my suffering. But I am going to run to God, who is in the middle of that, and his presence with us and with me in the midst of hardship. I'm going to lean into God and my relationship with him. He says, "But I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. Like a breastfed child is my soul within me." This is a really vivid, almost graphic picture of a a baby, a toddler who's transitioning from being breastfed, but has been calmed, has been weaned. God is, it's this picture that God is so present to us and so attentive to us as a mother is with her baby. It's one of the few instances where God is talked about in the maternal instance, like in the maternal sense, and not as a father but as a mother. He's pictured to us in this way. And this has been really stark for me, this kind of image recently, because I've got a 2-month-old son, and when he gets hungry, I can't soothe him. There's nothing that I can do. I can rock him, I can pat him on the back, I can try to give him a pacifier. Nothing is gonna let this guy calm down until his mother takes him and feeds him. And you can just watch his whole body relax, and this calm comes over his face, and he's quiet, and he's getting what he needs. And it's that warmth and intimacy with the mother, and getting the supply for what he needs, and getting fed. And that's the kind of picture that we have from David of our relationship with God, of this breastfed child, of getting weaned, of getting calmed, as he's being fed and held closely. And so let's think about all of what it means for God to be as present and attentive to us as a mother is with her baby, right? So think about the relationship that a mother has with her baby. A mother fiercely and protectively loves and cares for her baby, right? Like you don't mess with a new mom's baby. You're going to get your eyes clawed out, right? And God loves us. He loves us fiercely and protectively like a mother. He responds urgently to our cries, right? Like at night when Wendell cries, my wife she is on it. Like she wakes up immediately. Her ears are so attentive in a way that mine, I hear him, but not in the same way that my wife does, right? So she is so responsive to him, and she's also responsive not just to his cries, but also to his silence. That's the weird part, is like, think back on your own kids or kids that you've watched. When they're too quiet, there's something wrong, right? And you go looking for them. There's that pursuit of them when there's silence, right? Like too much silence. I remember my wife with our first kid, when Elsie was, Elsie would wake up a few times at night crying, but if she wouldn't cry and she was quiet too long, my wife would wake up at 2 a.m. and go check on her. Why? Because there's that silence of God, like she wants to make sure he's safe. So both in our crying out to him and in our silence and our apathy towards him, God pursues us like a mother with her child. And there's some real beauty in that, and that care for us that God has. So that's the kind of relationship that God has towards us in the middle of our suffering. And David ends this psalm, just to kind of wrap it up. He ends it with this statement: "O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore." And so he's saying that hope comes not through knowing all of the answers, right? He didn't receive any answers from God, but hope comes through the loving presence of God. That's where we really find hope for the future, is not in, God answering, well, why did this happen? But in his loving, abiding presence with us. And so as we close out, I want to end our time with a question that I love to discuss in the comment section below, as you guys are kind of reflecting on this. How do you create space in your life to simply be with God? How do you create space in your life to simply be with God? Because I think in the American church, we are obsessed with doing things for God. But Jesus reminds us time and time again that unless we first abide in him, we can bear no lasting fruit. That is, that our doing for Jesus must come out of our being with Jesus. And I think now is a perfect time, as our lives are beginning to slow down, so we can't go to all the activities, we can't serve in all the ministries that we had been serving in previously. Now is a time to really focus in on our being with Jesus, our abiding, our resting in him. And so, for me, There have been some spiritual disciplines that I've learned to incorporate in my daily life that really help me be present to God, and they aren't silver bullets, but they are historic practices that have helped the church for thousands of years be attentive to the presence of God. So this is kind of my schedule for the day. I start my day in silence and stillness before the Lord. So typically I spend about 5 minutes in complete silence. I go into my office and I sit at the same chair, and it's quiet, it's dark in there. I usually light a candle, so it's this calm place of quiet before my kids wake up. And I spend about 5 minutes in silence, just simply being with the Lord and listening to His voice. I'm not asking Him for anything. I'm not petitioning Him in prayer. I'm just listening. And even sometimes, it might be a little weird. I don't know, but sometimes I even imagine that God is hugging me. Like I have these visuals in my head of God being near me or Him holding me, and I like to just spend some time with Him. So then after that, after about 5 minutes or so, I open up my Bible to my reading plan or through the Psalms, and I read a chapter and reflect on that, meditate on that. And then I pray through what God was teaching me, either in silence or in Scripture. Then I pray for my family. And that's just, it takes about, 15, 25 minutes at the beginning of my day, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. But it's been a great practice for me. That kind of movement of silence and the Word and then prayer has been very, very helpful for me. So what are some practices that have helped you or that you would like to develop in order to calm and quiet your soul in the Lord, like Psalm 131? Thanks for joining us. I'd love to hear from you in the comments or in person. So God bless you and keep you and make His face shine upon you. Goodbye.